Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us tonight. My name is Andy Kripe, and I'm the Dean of Student Affairs here at Northwood University. And I'm happy to welcome you here to our virtual session tonight, where we're going to talk about what campus, academics, and a number of other items around campus and student life might look like when you return in the fall. Here with me also is Dr. Patty Tim. So Patty, I will allow you to introduce yourself if you'd like to.
Yes, I echo your sentiments of thanking everyone for taking the time to try to get a better understanding of what to expect and to get an idea of what we've been doing for the entire summer and even prior to that to get ready and make sure that you have an excellent academic and student life experience. So we're very grateful to be here and to be able to answer your questions.
Excellent. So before we start, just some background commentary for you all. Last week and this week, you would have received some emails that had some communications, and included in the communications was what we're going to review tonight, or at least a portion we're going to review tonight, is our playbook. This is our return to Northwood playbook. And I think the playbook is a perfect name for what this document is, because we all are members of a team. You've heard me talk a lot about Northwood being a family. You've heard me talk about taking care of each other and making a difference in each of our lives. And there's never been a better time for us to live that mantra right now, to make a difference in each other's lives, to have empathy for each other, respect, and take the responsibility that is going to be on all of us to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, but just as importantly, taking care of those around us. So this playbook is exactly that. It's our playbook that's designed to keep our team working together and making sure that we're taking care of each other. So with those introductory comments, let's dive right into it. There will be time for questions and answers at the end. If you'd like to ask questions, please do so in the comments off to the side. You can do that at any point during the presentation, but we'll wait until the end to answer questions. And we'll make sure that we leave plenty of time for that. So like I said, John, if you could take us through, there we go. Woody saying that we're number one, and we are. So the next slide, John, please. This slide talks about some return to campus protocols. And it talks about what we will expect once you get back to campus. Obviously, PPE is going to be a part of that, personal protection equipment, wearing a mask at all times, practicing good hand washing hygiene, and doing social distancing, disposable tissues, coughing, sneezing into the crook of your elbow, and cleaning and disinfecting frequently your areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about some other responsibilities when it comes to cleaning and disinfecting on campus in a little bit. So John, if we can move to the next slide. Prior to returning to campus, we are at this point right now, 14 days or less. We want you to begin monitoring your symptoms on a daily basis. This is going to be important because this needs to become part of your daily routine. I would even suggest that each of you put into your phone an alarm for the same time every single day in the morning, even the days that you don't have classes, that you monitor your symptoms and you record any symptoms that you might have that are consistent with COVID. Another thing I'd like to highlight on this slide that's very important is the third bullet point, that we will provide you with some personal protective equipment, but we will expect you to bring the following items that are listed there: a thermometer, plenty of masks, hand sanitizer, and antibacterial hand soap. John, if we can go to the next slide. This again talks about symptom monitoring. On a daily basis, we will expect you to report your symptoms. We are hoping to pilot an app later this week or early next week. And if that pilot goes well, we will communicate what that app is so that you can have it right on your phone. At this point, we aren't ready to communicate exactly what we're going to be using. We've been using a symptom monitoring tool for our employees as they've returned to work and back to campus. And it may be that we end up rolling that out for students as well. But at this point, the important thing to remember is that every single day, classes or no classes, on-campus activities or no on-campus activities, you start to get in the habit of monitoring your symptoms and keeping an eye out for any symptoms of COVID. Next slide, John, please. And again, these are some of the things that we're going to supply on campus. If you're a residential student, when you move in, whether you move in on August 21st, 22nd, or 23rd, or if you've sent an email to myhousing@northwood.edu to request an earlier or later sign up or a move-in time, you will be provided with these items that are bulleted there in a little swag bag when you arrive to the check-in tent. You'll get some soap, some sanitary wipes, hand sanitizer, some face masks, and a paper bag for storing your mask. Next slide, John, please. This slide talks about social distancing, and I'm sure you've all heard it many, many times. We need to maintain a safe social distance, 6 feet or 2 meters apart from each other at all times. We have to wear a mask at all times if we're not able to socially distance. When you get to campus, you will see many, many reminders, signs, markings on the floors, directional signs. Some doors will be entrance only, some doors will be exit only. There'll be traffic patterns established, and we will expect everyone to follow those recommendations. So this is a slide that just reiterates something I'm sure all of you know and understand, that we need to maintain proper social distancing. Again, wearing a face mask. It does need to cover your nose. We're not going to allow it to be down around your neck. It needs to be up over your nose and your mouth. You need to wear it correctly. Next slide, John, please. And this touches on disinfecting your living and learning areas. And this is one thing that, as I spoke in the beginning, taking responsibility for ourselves and for others. As you enter every single room on campus, classrooms, lounges, labs, breakout rooms, there will be disinfecting wipes, PPE, and other items available to you to use. And we will expect, as you go into a classroom, that you grab a wipe from the canister and you take it with you to your desk and you wipe down your desk, the surface that you're going to use before you sit down for your class. Same thing holds true if you go to a computer lab. We expect you to grab a wipe, wipe off the keyboard, wipe off the mouse, wipe off anything that you're going to touch, all the way through to every room you can think about on campus. In the laundry lounges out at North Village, there will be disinfecting wipes. When you do laundry, there's nothing special you need to do to your laundry, but we will expect you, prior to use, to wipe down the face of the washer and the dryer and any surfaces that you've touched. This is all part of our shared responsibility to take care of everyone around us. Next slide, John. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Tim to talk about some academic.
Thanks, Dean Kripe. In the first slide, it talks about our new class schedules. And I wanted, before I go through all of the information overview on the slide, I wanted to let you know what our guiding principles were when we made these decisions. So first of all, we really wanted to be agile and flexible. No matter what the conditions are, we want to be able to provide the same quality education. So we're building in that agility and flexibility. We wanted to give a remote option for all students and make it more like that in-person experience, not your traditional online experience. Our students registered late in March, just after they were done with spring break. They didn't get back, but they were done with spring break. And we did not want to disrupt those schedules. Students spend a lot of time trying to select times and faculty, so we wanted to work within those time slots and those schedules. So we did not want to require students to re-register. One thing we did want to do is we wanted to reduce the number of classes a student is taking at one time. Total number of credit hours for the semester is the same, but we found when we did our pivot to online in the spring that students that were trying to handle 5, 6 different classes were struggling with all of the communication and just keeping up with all of those classes. So that is why we came up with the combination of a traditional 16-week structure and compressed 8-week sections. So we went to our faculty and we asked them which classes they felt needed to be 16 weeks and which ones could in fact be offered in that compressed format. And any student that has taken a summer class has already taken a compressed class. Our summer classes are 6-week compressed courses. And Northwood University has a long history of being able to offer compressed courses through our multiple business units. So this is not something new for Northwood University. We have in fact designed curriculum that's been used for a long period of time around that 8-week functionality. And then we asked our faculty to redesign their classes so that they were prepared to offer their classes either face-to-face or remote. So building in that anticipation that no matter what happens, we know that our course can be delivered and at the same quality. So one of the things with the 8-week courses that I want to emphasize here for both students and parents is that students need to understand that they're getting the same amount of content, but in 8 weeks. So you're really moving at double pace. So you have to allocate the same amount of time as you would if you had 2 3-credit hour courses, but now you're just focusing on a single subject in that 8-week period for a particular course. So students actually find, and most of them are pretty happy with being able to immerse themselves in fewer topics. So they're spending more time on fewer topics and going into more depth for a shorter period of time. So our faculty have been in professional development all summer, intensive professional development for us to be able to support their redesign of their courses, both for being able to be flexible between face-to-face and remote, and to handle the 8-week versus 16-week format. And in all of these decisions, it was our faculty that determined which classes were appropriate for those formats. So all along the way, we've been keeping our faculty involved in the decision-making process. So for every single course, there will be a remote option. You don't have to register for an online option or an online course. You can stay in your current sections. Every classroom will have a web camera, so all lectures are able to be live streamed. So the students actually have access in my.northwood.edu in their student portal. There is an area for Michigan undergraduate student resources. And that's really where all students should go to make sure that they have the information that they need for academics. And in there, there's a detailed description of our remote options, which we call real-time online. So it really is just participating remotely, being in class during the live stream of the lecture. So it is important that students be available during those same time blocks. They'll be able to ask questions, they'll be able to interact with the professor and other students, they'll hear the other student questions. So they will be part of that class and a member of that classroom. And then the only thing that we request is if a student does already know that they want to participate remotely, we have a notification form. It's not an approval form. It truly is just a notification so we can have an understanding of which students and in which classes they are going to be remote, so that a professor is prepared to know how many students and which of their students may have determined that they want to take their classes remotely. Next slide, please, John. Now, with the classroom instruction, all of the classrooms have been reviewed and are currently being rearranged. So all students have a 6-foot radius around them. So we will keep the 6 feet physical distancing, and all students and faculty will be wearing masks. So it's not an either or, it's an and. The 6 feet of physical distancing and the mask. None of our classrooms are going to be utilized at more than 50% capacity. The capacity usage at this point ranges between about 25% and 50%. We do have computer labs that we are outfitting with large plexiglass sheets so that there can be barriers between each computer station. We were unable to rearrange them in such a way to give the 6 feet, so there will be large plexiglass barriers, and students and faculty will be wearing masks. Next slide, please, John. And then this is my final slide. I wanted to assure you that all of our support services are going to be available, whether a student wants the face-to-face interaction or a online or distant interaction. So our library and tutoring services are going to continue to provide online services, along with, once we're back on campus, having those face-to-face options. The library is being rearranged again to keep that physical distancing, but there will be areas for students to study outside of their residence hall. And then advising will also have that combination, either face-to-face or online. So all of our advising and success coaching will be available, whatever choice a student makes for their comfort level with interactions on campus.
And I need to unmute. Only the millionth time I've done that since COVID started. Thank you, Patty. So the next section we'd like to talk about is in our residence halls. So John, if you can advance us past that beautiful picture of North Village. This slide covers some of the things that most of you probably already know about what we're doing within our residential and housing complexes. Minor Du Bois, we were able to offer single rooms. So instead of freshmen and those living in Minor Du Bois having roommates, they will actually have their own rooms and just have a suite mate, which puts 2 students in a situation where they share only 1 bathroom. We've considered a lot of roommate requests and, again, been able to accommodate most of those. What else do I want to? In this slide, it also talks about common areas and lounges. There will be capacities, as Patty mentioned, with classrooms. Same thing. Lounges will be clearly marked with capacities, as will common areas. Some lounges and breakout rooms are so small that it would be just 1 person in there. And some lounges, breakout rooms, and small common areas might actually be closed off. So depending on the size of them, there'll be certainly capacity limitations and possibly closed. So John, if we can fast forward to our first dining services slide. And that actually illustrates one of the things that is going to change, that picture did, about our dining services this fall. There won't be any more self-service buffet lines. Don't worry, the food will still be all you can eat, and it still will be buffet style in our main dining hall, but it will be served by staff members. So the food will, and the spoons will be turned around. You'll be served on biodegradable, disposable plates and bowls, so that we're not reusing silverware and bowls and plates. And again, we're using biodegradable. And you'll have to get a new bowl, plate, or glass cup every time you come up for more food. Carryout options are still available both through the Dow Commons Dining Hall as well as in the Mid-Calf and North Village Bistro. Another app that we are piloting hopefully soon here will be a Get app. And the Get app, G-E-T, Get app, will allow for two very important things. Number one, for folks to order ahead. So as you're finish up in class, getting ready to clean your desk as you leave class, you can get on your phone and you can order a meal to be picked up at the Mid-Calf or the North Village Bistro. The other nice thing about the app is it allows for touchless payment. So on the app, all your meal plan details will be there, methods of payments, dining bucks, bonus dollars, things like that will all be there. So once that app is ready, we'll roll that out and you'll be able to use your phone to pay and use your meal plan at all our dining facilities instead of pulling out your card and having to swipe it. Other items included on that this slide is that we are sanitizing all surfaces every hour. We're going to be cleaning all tables in between uses by different students. All customer contact services will be sanitized every 30 minutes. One important bullet point that I jumped over there at the very beginning, the second bullet point, is that everyone that enters our dining facilities, faculty, staff, student, guests, will have their temperatures taken as they enter that facility. We thought that that was one place where we could readily do this and be a little bit more vigilant in keeping an eye out for any COVID symptoms. Social distancing guidelines will be in place in all our dining facilities. And John, if you can go to the next slide. This slide actually describes, oh, we got to go back one. There we go. This slide actually describes and outlines some of the capacity guidelines for our different dining facilities. And as you can see, we're still able in the Dow Dining Hall to serve 110 students. We will monitor, and there will be people dedicated to monitoring the lines. You'll see as you enter the facilities on the floor and throughout the facility, reminders of social distancing. So one of the places that we really need to keep an eye on that is while everyone is queued in line. And so we'll make sure that we're maintaining that. And that will, at Dow Commons Dining Hall anyway, limit the number of students in line to about 25. So there may be students times where you arrive to the Dow Commons Dining Hall and it looks like there's a very long line, but just remember that there's only 25 people allowed in the line because of the distancing that we have to put between students and guests. So the line isn't as long as it seems, number one, but number two, if there is a line, you need to start thinking ahead right now, students, that if you have that 8 o'clock class and you're going to get up and eat breakfast, and once you stop laughing about that prospect, because nobody eats breakfast before an 8 o'clock class, just realize that you're not going to be able to run down to the dining hall at 10 till 8 and be able to have breakfast in a timely fashion. There may be a line there. So what I'm trying to say is give yourself a little bit more time, give yourself a little bit of patience, and allow for this process to take a little bit more time so that we can, again, have that responsibility piece and maintain proper social distancing. So John, if we can move forward. So this is obviously an important piece of our playbook, and this is the response to a positive COVID case. So John, if you can, there you go. This slide discusses some of the symptoms, and it basically at the beginning talks about the fact that if we do have a student that is confirmed positive for COVID-19, we do have rooms set aside on campus in the NADA hotel to isolate those students if necessary. One of the questions I've been getting is, do students have to isolate on campus? And this is for residential students. Commuter students will be required to isolate at their off-campus residences. Students that live on campus will be required to isolate in the NADA hotel. And one of two questions I get most about this is, number one, do students have to stay on campus and isolate here on campus? And the answer to that is no. As long as state, local, federal guidelines allow for travel, we certainly will allow family members to come and pick up the students so they can recuperate and isolate at home if that's what they choose to do. The second question I get a lot about this topic is, if a student is in isolation, can they take visitors? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. If a student is being isolated, they have tested positive for COVID-19 and they need to truly be isolated. So that will take place if it's an on-campus residential student. They will be isolated as appropriate in the NADA hotel. Commuter students will be isolated in their off-campus residences, and those that do want to travel home, if it's allowed, can do so. Contact tracing, as we work our way through this slide, will be initiated both by us as well as the Midland County Health Department, because in a population as dense as a university, we need to begin that process immediately. So we'll be talking with the student about where they've been over the last period of time since they've had symptoms. Students will be removed from self-isolation once they've been cleared by their healthcare provider. And if we can go to the next slide, John, I think it might be easier. Actually, let's skip forward one more. There you go. This slide talks about isolation and quarantine, and I think it's important to distinguish between the two. Quarantine is for someone who has been exposed to someone who has tested positive for COVID, or may be experiencing some symptoms while they're waiting to see if those symptoms manifest themselves into COVID-19. Isolation is for someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 and is ill with the virus. So now, John, if we can go back one slide. This talks about the two protocols for self-quarantining and isolation. So either way, a student shouldn't come to campus. If a student wakes up in the morning, they do their symptom monitoring, and they have a couple symptoms of COVID, the first thing they're going to want to do is contact the COVID hotline. And in an email that we sent that included this playbook was also the addendum to the student handbook. And I would encourage all of you to review that again and again and know that front and back, because in that addendum to the student handbook, it talks about the phone numbers you need to call, and what contacts you need to make if you begin to experience COVID-like symptoms. So the student would call the COVID hotline and then get guidance from them. If a test is warranted, if the student doesn't have the ability to get to a testing site, we have set up here on campus the ability to drive them in vehicles that are dedicated only to transporting students with suspected or possible COVID cases. The cars will be driven by our STT security personnel. Precautions will be taken, and in between each trip that they make with students, the cars will be sanitized and deep cleaned. And it's important to note down there's a note that says that a residential student who is sick or symptomatic but is not yet confirmed positive with COVID-19 will likely be asked to isolate within their existing residence. So again, if you look at the CDC recommended guidelines, folks that are not are symptomatic but not yet confirmed positive can be isolated within their own residences and not have to be separated out. But again, within that residence, those students are going to continue to have to practice proper social distancing, wearing PPE, and continue to be vigilant, as we hope they already have been, in keeping their surfaces in their apartments clean. So now, John, that I've asked you to jump around a little bit, can we advance one slide and see, we talked about that. Can we go one more slide? Yeah, John, let's go to the last slide in the deck. There you go, thank you. So this slide describes that our operational oversight. And we have established a Northwood University pandemic response team. And our executive team will make institutional decisions when it comes to different levels of operation on our campus. And outlined there are 5 different levels of operation that we may experience as we move through the fall and into this academic year. And we've identified, as it says there, vigilance, isolate, and trace, the potential for shelter in place that would be limited if there was an outbreak within a certain area on campus, a shelter in place that would be campus-wide, or a campus closure or a return to home if we get to a point where we have too many cases on campus. So at this point, I'd like to bring Patty back onto the screen if we can, John. And that's the extent of our presentation from the playbook. Again, this is a condensed version of the playbook. There are probably 15 more slides that are included in the playbook. So I would encourage all of you to go back, read through the full playbook, and then also, as I mentioned, look at that addendum to the student handbook, review that, and become familiar with that. So unless, Patty, you have other items to cover quickly before we go to questions and answers, let's, I guess, go to questions and answers.
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and bring up, we do have quite a few, so let's go ahead and start with Lisa. Lisa asks, do you intend to soften some of these protocols as the virus wanes?
I think to answer your question the best way, Lisa, is that this is a fluid and dynamic situation, and it has been for 5 months, and I think it will continue to be. And yes, we will continue to monitor the situation, and we'll soften, which I think we'll take that as good news that the virus has started to wane. Or if, unfortunately, if we go the other direction, then we would want to react that way. As Patty said in her comments, this is fluid, but we're an agile university, and we'll react whichever way we need to as appropriate.
Great, thank you. Another question here. Is there a threshold set for the amount of coronavirus cases before classes or activities on campus are canceled?
And on that question, we would say that we're going to monitor a variety of different variables, and that will influence that decision. And there is not a specific threshold because, again, it's a fluid situation, and there's just so many different variables that we have to consider as we move from one stage of that operational chart to the next. So no, there isn't a hard number, but there will be full consideration of all the different variables going into where we are.
Perfect. Another question here. Any thoughts of having all students tested before they come to school?
Well, Patty, we talked about, we mentioned, we've been meeting regularly at least twice a week, sometimes most weeks 3 times a week, and we've talked about a lot of different scenarios, and testing did come up, but given our conversations with the local Midland County Health Department, as well as the folks at Mid-Michigan Medical Center, testing was talked about, but we have decided in consultation with them to not test all students prior to them coming, nor will we be doing any testing on our campus. That's just not going to be part of our protocol. Patty, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
yeah, the thought process behind that is a test is just a snapshot at a point in time. And with the delays in getting test results and then the possibility of exposure, since the test was taken, we didn't feel, and the medical experts that we consult did not feel that that was going to give us more assurance than what we are currently going to receive. So yes, we talked about it a great deal, but the current testing conditions do not make that the right answer for us at this time. And we'll continue to monitor new technology and new testing and those types of things.
Perfect. Another question for you from Angela Dean Tim. Will live stream also be recorded and available online for viewing afterward?
Yes, that is the intent. Now that also requires a faculty member to push a lot of buttons, but yes, that is the intent. But I want to qualify that answer a little bit. This gives me a jumping off point for one of the reasons we wanted to do the live streaming was not just for students who chose not to return to campus to face-to-face instruction, but as you've seen the symptoms for COVID and knowing that daily students are going to be monitoring their symptoms, from day to day, we're going to have different students who may wake up with a sore throat, or they might have a temperature, or something else that falls onto that list of symptoms. And they have to call the hotline. We have to get the determination. So we want to make sure that those students, as long as they are feeling well enough to go to class, is that they would be able to still participate in class by having the live stream. So that was one point, but your real question was about the recording. Watching a recorded lecture should be an and rather than an or. So it's not meant to be a substitute for attending class. It's intended to be, if there's some circumstance out of your control and you can't be in class, talk to your professor, explain the situation, tell them you're going to watch the lecture. Or if the content was not clear the first time around and you wanted to hear the lecture again, then yes, you'll have the recording for that. But it's very important that students understand that it's not intended to be a substitute for participating in attendance of the lecture.
Great, thank you. Another question here. For the single bedroom and shared bathroom policy, will that apply to Nagley Village as well? is there a possibility that the student will end up sharing a bathroom with more than one person?
Yes, that is a possibility. At Nagley and at North, students will share with one other student in the 4 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms. The only exception at North is if they're in a 1 bedroom, 1 bath by themselves. In Nagley, we do have apartments that house up to 6 students, and there's 2 bathrooms in there. So in some cases in Nagley, some students will share with 2 other students as opposed to just 1.
Perfect. Next question here. If a student has to isolate at the hotel, will the university arrange for cleaning and sanitizing of the dorm rooms before they're able to return back?
Absolutely. We, unfortunately, we have a pretty good relationship with a company called ServPro. And that's kind of a flood joke, so anybody that didn't catch it. But we are doing well after the flood, and we are operational and ready to roll. But in our conversations with ServPro, they will come in, we will bring an outside company in ServPro, and they will clean and disinfect those rooms, both the room that the student is living in and then the room that the student is occupying while they're isolating.
Great. And speaking of that topic real quick, do you have any additional comments? We have quite a few people asking about the conditions of campus following the flood. Just to touch on that real quick.
Yeah, everything, well, not everything. You'll notice some places we're going to still be working on when you get back to campus. The heavier hit areas of campus were down near the Hawk Center, the Bennett Center. Water did get into Lower Jordan, Lower Strosacker, areas like that. And so a Lower Minor. And so actually I'm glad that this was brought up, because when you get back to campus, you may go looking for financial aid or what was known before as the business office, and you'll go to Lower Minor and you won't find them there anymore. They've been moved to the church building. So Lower Minor, we continue to work on that. Lower Strosacker, we continue to work on that as well. Lower Jordan, we're working on, and hopefully we'll have most of that operational. And Bennett and the Hawk Center, again, there'll be some areas that aren't completely done when you return to campus, but for the most part, ServPro came in and did an incredible job. Our physical plant folks have done an incredible job, and we're going to be back up and running online pretty much everywhere you go, except for those few exceptions I mentioned.
Great to hear.
And I would just add that we do have quite a few classrooms that were offline in those areas that Dean Kripe mentioned. But what's one of the many silver linings that we've seen through all of these trials has been that by already having decided to go to the 8-week classes, we had already moved over 90 sections of classes to the second 8 weeks, which meant that we were able to handle not just having classrooms taken offline, but the increased capacity needs. So what at first blush should have been an overwhelming issue has worked out beautifully. So we're very fortunate we already had those plans in the works.
Perfect. Another question coming in here. Do you have data on the origin states of the incoming students?
I'm sure we do, but I don't have it, unfortunately, in front of me, Colleen. So I don't want to speak out of turn. Overwhelmingly, our students are from the Midwest. And I guess I'm guessing your question is probably targeted toward students coming in from areas of the country that are a little bit more hot than where we are. And I can't speak for that. I don't know if Patty, if you have anything on that, but overwhelmingly, most of our students are right here from the Midwest.
Yes, I don't have the exact statistics, but for example, international students, just in case, I know this said states, but I want to make sure that you know that our international students, when they come to campus, they will automatically be self-quarantining for 14 days. So all international students are self-quarantining. And then in terms of students coming from other states, we're asking everyone, no matter where they're coming from, to be monitoring for symptoms for those 14 days. And we're asking everyone to do the same safety protocols. So wear their masks, keep a distance from each other. So that's part of the strategy, is to make sure we do use that personal responsibility and empathy, and wear your mask, keep your distance, keep other people safe.
Perfect. Well, the next question I see here, are medicines available on campus for purchase should a student get ill? And what guidance has been provided to faculty to assist students who might get sick?
I can take the first part, and then I'll turn it over to Dean Tim. We do have the Student Health Center on campus. It's staffed by a full-time registered nurse and an office assistant. And then we have family medicine physician that visits the facility once a week. We do have medicines available on campus, but they are all over-the-counter medicines, and they're free. The students can go and see the physician or the nurse, and that's free of charge. And any over-the-counter medicine that is provided to the student would be free of charge as well. Any prescription medicine would need to be obtained via a prescription at a pharmacy or facility off campus. And then, Patty, if I can turn the second part over to you.
Sure. Really, all of our employees have the same playbook as our students do when it comes to if someone's not feeling well, exhibiting symptoms. The faculty would, in fact, be telling the student to contact both Nurse Sue and the COVID hotline. So that will always be our default, is to make sure that they follow those protocols. And I know these faculty, and they're all caring people that want to make sure that your students are safe. And most of them are parents as well, so they treat your kids as their kids. And we would be asking them to please stay in your room, contact the COVID hotline and Nurse Sue.
Awesome. We got another question in. Have you had any discussions with any of the apartment leasing in regards to the possibility that the campus should have to close again, allowing students to break those leases if necessary? Dean Cripe?
If you want to clarify your question, the way I read it is, have we had discussions with apartment complexes with regard to their leases? And no, that's not anything we would discuss with them. That's something that the students or the rentor, the tenant, would have to take up with their specific landlord. If that's not your specific question, please follow up if you would.
Great. Another question we got, a little bit of information in the playbook, a lot of times refers to just symptomatic. Do you want to touch on the difference between symptomatic and asymptomatic from a playbook perspective?
I can take it, Andy.
Right,
I think
Patty.
we'll say the same thing.
Reading ahead a little bit there, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to come at this from two different ways, because I'm not quite sure I know exactly which way you're coming from. First of all, we do know that there are asymptomatic people who have COVID who won't be calling the COVID hotline because they don't have any symptoms. That's where the PPE and the social distancing comes into play. And that's where that empathy and that personal responsibility comes into play. Is if you're asymptomatic, but you're wearing your mask and you're keeping the social distance, that's going to help protect your fellow students. So there's we all know that there's no magic sign that goes on that says this person does in fact have COVID if they're asymptomatic. But if they're asymptomatic, but there was a reason, perhaps they had been in contact with someone who in fact did test positive, then we would follow the protocol. We would have them self-quarantine. We would make sure that they contacted the COVID hotline, and depending on what the health department said, determine whether or not that they should get tested. We're relying on the experts that are protecting our entire community, not just Northwood, but all of Midland County.
Absolutely. Another question that we're getting, Jean Kripe, if you're able to answer this one, what happens if campus closes down within the first couple months of opening when it comes to room and board that we have paid for?
Well, Grace, we're going to keep our fingers crossed, and we're going to be diligent that that doesn't happen. That's what this is all about, us working together to make sure that we're wishing each other a Merry Christmas and walking up and down the mall walk listening to the Christmas music. But if that would happen, then we would institute a refund or credit policy that would include a prorated portion of what you've paid in. So that's what we would do.
Perfect. And another question we've kind of been getting, Jean Kripe, if you're able to maybe explain it again, a little bit about, if a student does test positive and is isolating on campus, and say they were needing to get a prescription off campus, how would that process work? I think that answers some of the questions we've been getting.
Yeah, we will, whatever the specific, whatever the details are around a specific case, we'll make sure that we accommodate that. Like I said, we have the cars set up to drive students to and from testing. If it's a prescription that a staff member wouldn't be able to pick up without the student or without proper ID, we would account for that. Yeah, whatever the specific occurrence would require, we'll make sure that we do our best to accommodate it. If your question is about financial assistance getting the prescription off campus, all students have insurance, and so insurance would be billed. But as far as getting off campus to get prescriptions, things like that, we can make accommodations and do what we can to help them and assist them.
Perfect. Another question too falls under the student life and residence life piece of it. How is if someone breaks a rule or one of these policies, how is that whole process going to be handled? If someone sees a violation, who do they contact? Information like that.
Yeah. The first part is the last part of your question, John. That if they see a violation, and first and foremost, this is all about having the responsibility to be able to talk to someone and say, hey, I notice you don't have a mask on, please put on a mask on. And hopefully they're compliant with it. So hopefully first and foremost, we as a university family would be comfortable having a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation with each other to say, hey, what you're doing is making me a little bit uncomfortable. Can you please change what you're doing? If that doesn't resolve the issue, or if it's met with a little bit of less than desirable response, then you can always contact my office and we can go from there. As far as any sanctions that are spelled out, we don't have sanctions spelled out for anything specific, except for two things. If a student is ordered to isolate or quarantine and they are caught not abiding by that order, that can be dealt with in a way that could remove them from campus housing. Those are two things that we just can't mess around with, and we need to be perfectly clear that if someone is quarantined or isolated, it's because we are trying to reduce the risk and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. There is no other reason that someone would be in those two situations. And if they are not compliant with that, then we will absolutely deal with that in a very swift and harsh way. If someone continues to not wear a mask, we have our resident advisors that just are coming in tonight, and we're starting to go through training with them. And again, we're going to talk to them about having conversations with their fellow students about putting on a mask. If they have to do it too many times, and I'm not sure what too many times is, some of it will depend on the situation. A lot of it will depend on the situation, how they react. Is the student compliant? But if they're met with resistance more than what they want to be dealing with it, again, it'll be referred to my office and we'll have a conversation. We all need to be participants in this playbook. We all need to take responsibility for the things that are outlined. The playbook is based on recommendations from national, local, and state agencies. It's best practices, and there is an expectation that people will follow what's in them. I hope that we don't get to the situation where I'm talking with students about them not wearing PPE, but if it does happen, we will have that conversation, and based on all the circumstances, we'll move forward.
And I'd just like to add to that, you know, we see on the news altercations, you know, about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And all of our students are coming to campus knowing full well and signing a commitment that they are going to, in fact, follow our rules as it relates to PPE and social distancing. So they come here knowing what the expectation is. And as a Northwood student, they should know our code of ethics. And we, of course, will enforce our code of ethics. But in addition to that, no student should feel uncomfortable that maybe they're putting themselves in harm's way. Every single building has an employee who is the building safety coordinator. They can just go to a building and ask, and those building safety coordinators, they're employees that can, in fact, handle that situation. We have on-campus security, so if need be, we can involve security as well if there's no one available in Andy's office. But all of us on campus, all the employees, are dedicated to making sure that we do, in fact, have everyone following the rule. We have employees that are concerned about the same things you are. What happens if a student comes into my office and they're not wearing their PPE? So we're having these discussions continually, and we will, in fact, use our resources to ensure that they do, in fact, follow what they have in good faith said they are going to follow.
Great. Another question came in from Austin. Any update on athletics? We know we had the athletic update last week. Any updates since then that the students need to be aware of?
Well, hiding in our secret little waiting room, we have our athletic director. If John, you could on the screen, and Dave Marsh will join us. And Dave, would you like to take this question?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Austin. Yeah, so we, last week, the NCAA, as you probably are aware, set forth quite a few guidelines and so forth that we adhere to. And tomorrow, the GLIAC presidents have a meeting to discuss the fall season. So we'll know more after that meeting tomorrow. So probably Wednesday on what, a little bit more on what the fall will look like.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question we have from Ivan. How would you deal with a student who medically can't wear a mask? I believe there is a protocol for that.
Ivan, what we have done, and we have a student currently on campus that has communicated to us that wearing a mask might be an issue. We have asked that student, and we would ask any student that has a concern about that to reach out to Dr. Karen McGregor and outline the request, give us specific information, and we will contact you and we'll work through that. We see that as potentially an accommodation, but we want to know as much information as we can get and certainly have a phone conversation. What we've done with a number of students at this point that have talked to us about that is we asked them to find a bandana or a neck, I can't remember what they're called, fleece, neck fleece, and experiment and wear something other than a mask if a mask is too tight and around your mouth and nose, and wear that for incrementally more time each day. And we found that that has worked for a number of students that felt like they might have a problem with that. But if you're going to do that, and if you're asking for yourself, I would start doing that right now, because as we approach returning to campus, we need to get you prepared to be able to wear something over your face. But if you need to contact someone, I would contact Dr. Karen McGregor, and we can start that conversation.
Perfect. Another question here about recreational athletic classes and sports, and I'm sure you could probably touch on student life, or at least where to find information about what events are going to be offered, how is that going to work, all that fun stuff.
I can touch on the student life piece and some of our classes, fitness classes. We just actually talked today, and we're going to be talking with the community center, the Midland Community Center, tomorrow, about continuing a lot of our classes outdoors, as you have suggested in your question. You're also going to see a couple different tents set up around campus when you return that will allow us some outdoor space that's covered from the elements. So yes, we are hoping to offer a full complement of our fitness classes outside, maybe under the tent or in different areas on campus. We are still evaluating intramurals and volleyball and things like that. As Dave Marsh just shared with us, there's some decisions to be made on athletics. And once those decisions have been made, I think it's probably prudent for us to have intramurals and other things like that fall in line with what that decision looks like. So, but more to come on our fitness classes. We're definitely going to be offering them, and as you suggested, they will likely be outside.
And I would just add that, we understand how important physical activity is to your overall health and well-being, and we're all struggling with how to do that. And it's been interesting in other meetings I've been in, other conversations. First of all, we have such a gorgeous campus, and we have the rail trail. If you bring a bike, I mean, that would be fabulous to just be able to ride the rail trail. I've even heard employees talk about, hey, I could meet up with someone who wants to run and we can do that together, or I'll go for a bike ride with someone. So we're all in this together, and we're all trying to come up with ways to create more opportunities for our students, which I think will just make us a better team overall, making those connections. So again, seeing some silver linings with faculty and staff reaching out to try to figure out how we can help our students have the type of experience that they want to have on campus.
Great. Well, that covers all of our formal questions on YouTube. I would just want to ask this question I've been getting from some fellow students of mine through text or email or whatever it might be. From an academic perspective, if they have an 8-week course, are they supposed to attend during 4 days of the week, or are they still on traditionally the 2 days that they would be on? How does that kind of work?
That's a very good question. So because we kept the same time slots, they will actually still only meet twice a week. So they're still only meeting 3 hours in the classroom instead of 6. So all of our 8-week classes automatically become a hybrid. You hear the term hybrid a great deal. So our faculty members will have to be providing more content, whether that's lectures or videos or other resources outside of the normal class time. So they will only meet those 3 hours per week.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification. I believe that concludes all of the questions that we have. So Dean,
There's actually one more. I can see it. I don't know if you can, John, from Debbie. Debbie with 3 exclamation points. You know what, Debbie? About an hour before I got on this virtual session, I read the same study that you read. And so my neck, and thank you for telling me it's a neck gaiter, is sitting on my desk. And so I need to look more into that. And if research continues to support that, then we'll have to reevaluate what we feel is an acceptable alternative to a face mask. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Thank you for sharing it, though.
and I think that's just to clarify too with everybody. I think based on all the information you have all shared with us through the playbook, this is a fluid situation. This is probably going to continue to evolve and change over time. But that's one of the great things about Northwood is that we adapt on the fly. We work with agility. We work with speed to make sure that the best recommendations that we have from health experts and from our local experts as well are all taken into consideration and make sure we have that safe environment for when students and myself arrive back on campus for the fall to start. Dean Kripe, Dean Tim, I'll hand it over to you guys for some final comments and or anything else you want to share.
Well, we've kept you very, very long. I'm sure that this isn't the most exciting thing that you usually do with your evenings, but again, we really appreciate that you took this time, that you love Northwood enough to want to make sure that you understand what to expect when you come back to campus and make sure that we've thought of all of the contingencies that we should. And for me, if there's anything in academics that you have a question on that isn't clear in any of the other resources, feel free to give me an email. My email is just my last name, Tim, Timm, @northwood.edu. So feel free, if your advisor or the materials don't give you the answers, feel free to give me a quick email and I'll get back with you.
Awesome. And I would finish up with just 2 things. Number one, I've been at Northwood for a while, and what keeps bringing me back is all of you. We have a special crowd here. We rise to the occasion. We make a difference in people's lives. And we have an opportunity right now to do that on a daily basis. You've probably heard me talk a lot about it's those things that you do and say on a smaller scale every single day that make a difference in somebody's life. You don't even know that you do it sometimes. And we have an opportunity now to really make a difference in each other's lives. And secondly, I want to emphasize the responsibility and empathy that is found in our Code of Ethics. Again, these are things that are printed and put on a web page and in a student handbook. But folks, you have proven over and over again that we embrace them, we're passionate about it, and we live them on a daily basis. And this is just another great opportunity for us to show each other our empathy and compassion for each other and to navigate through what is going to be an ever-changing environment, but to communicate with each other. Please, please, don't just have an experience and then go and isolate from that experience. Talk to Dr. Tim, talk to me, talk to your faculty. Communication is going to be so key to all of us moving through this. So we are at your disposal. I will offer that up. As Dr. Tim said, I am as well. Please email me, my last name, kripe@northwood.edu. Happy to take questions, comments, but we've said it a couple times tonight. We really are rowing this boat together. And so I look forward to the challenges that we'll experience. I look forward to the victories that we absolutely will experience as we go through this. I wish you all great health, and students enjoy the last almost 2 weeks of your summer. And we've already welcomed some students back to campus, and I can't tell you how good it feels. So we're looking forward to having all of you back here on campus and working with you to make this a great academic year. Thanks again for joining us, and everybody take care, please.